Hi everyone, it's Artie from the Human Chapters. I'll tell you a little bit about the human chapters. Humans are living narratives with a past, present, and future. These narratives constitute of a number of chapters across a lifespan. The aim of the conversations at Human Chapters is to highlight a chapter of the narrative and unpack its connections to other chapters. I don't care whether people are natural storytellers, but I truly believe each person has a story to tell. Here's an acknowledgement to country. We acknowledge the traditional owners of the land which now comprises Greater Shepparton. We pay respect to their tribal elders, past and present and emerging. We celebrate their continuing culture and we acknowledge the memory of their ancestors. So today we have the pleasure of getting to know Tania. Tania's chapter is her migration journey. I'll pass it on to you, Tania.
Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. My name is Tanya, and like the title, this chapter is, yeah, exactly, my migration journey, which is a very long chapter, which I haven't told too often. And it's great that you said maybe we're not natural storytellers. So I'm excited to be on this platform and just talk about my chapter. But right now, I'm originally from Kenya and I'm based in Germany. I moved to Germany 5 years ago. Before that, actually, I lived in 8 countries. Um, right? You'd think that moving to Germany would be an easier, like just another country I moved to, but I want to highlight this country because it was actually the hardest adjustment that I had. And because it was the hardest, I learned so much. I learned so much about myself. I learned so much about a different perspective, about a different culture. And through that, I was able to build more on my character. Yeah, so that was, yeah, that's basically the highlight. And this is pretty much my life.
Wow. Do you know what, Tanya? I've been there listening to you speak, and I'm trying to place you or have a defined, this is where you're from. Yes, I know you're from Kenya.
True.
You don't sound Kenyan, and that makes sense. I was like, where is it from? Yeah, yeah.
Uh,
No.
It's true. I actually get that question a lot about my accent. So I was born in Kenya. I moved away to other countries, and when I was 14, we actually went back to Kenya, me and my family, and we've been based there since. However, in that time, I moved around a lot, but home was always actually Kenya. So base, wherever we needed a place to go, it was to Kenya. And within this migration journey, I grew such a passion for Kenya because I saw so many places and I was like, you know what? Kenya is a really special place. There is no place like Kenya. And it really touched my heart. And I started sharing this experience with other people. And they were like, wow, Tanya, I can see the glow in your face when you mentioned Kenya. And I'm like, yes, you have to come and see. And yeah, I mean, I've been to Kenya so often with other people as well. That's something I should actually mention. So I studied tourism management in South Africa. So I've always had a passion for travel. And of course, that is kind of seen through all the countries I've lived. I've also traveled to more. Um, and yeah, so I just felt this connection with Kenya and I felt I had to spread it. And that's actually how you and I met. We met through the platform, The Kenyan Kind, which is similar to this. We're telling stories from Kenyans, whether they're in Kenya or globally, their story. And it's so inspiring to hear, just like mine and many others, how people have grown from where they started to where they are now. And it's just so humbling to read them. And Kenya, when I say Kenya is a special place, I mean that from my heart.
Absolutely. I totally empathize with you. It's
Yeah.
truly a special place. Now, tell us about your with your migration journey. You moved to Germany. How did that start? Take us through a bit of that journey.
Yeah, definitely. So basically, I mentioned that I studied tourism management in South Africa, right? And after you graduate, you always ask yourself the question, okay, what should I do now? What profession should I go into? And I think every university student probably goes through this moment like, okay, what's the next step? And actually, the next step at that moment, because I'm a coastarian, I come from the coast of Kenya. So I decided to apply for a job in Zanzibar, another coast. So I actually went to Zanzibar. I worked in a boutique hotel, very beautiful by the beach. The only problem is that it was very secluded.
Mm.
And in that moment, I was just surrounded, okay, I was surrounded by other colleagues, but they were much older than me at that time. And I didn't have anyone to connect to. So I was pretty much, for the most part, on my own. And it was an interesting phase for me because I was navigating now life on my own. I didn't have my friends, and also internet connection wasn't amazing there.
Mm.
So I was like, okay, I don't know if I could, you know, do this for a long time. So actually, I wanted to study again. So I looked into Europe. Um, Maybe that helps. I also come from a mixed background. So my mother isn't actually Kenyan, she's Madagascan. My dad isn't Kenyan either, he's English, but somehow we ended up in Kenya. So I do have the English passport, which I never took advantage of. So I was like, you know what, maybe I should go to Europe and study. I have a British passport, it gives me easy access, plus education in Europe is cheap. Let me give it a chance.
Yes.
So I applied actually to Austria, to a little city called Salzburg. Beautiful city. Oh my gosh. When I went there, it was like a fairy tale. I'm coming from different, from the coast, and I'm just like, wow, snow, castles, the architecture, Mozart, it was amazing. Um, After a while, then I realized, okay, now we need to get back into work. So that's when I came to Germany because there was more opportunities here. And when I came to Germany, that was when things started getting really hard for me because I maybe had a naive mindset. I thought that things would be really smooth. But
Mm.
firstly, there's a big language barrier, which, by the way, the countries that I've lived in, there was no real language barrier. It was easy to communicate.
Yes.
And the German language on top of that is pretty rigid and strict. So when learning it, I felt like my personality was also changing. Now I come from the coast, everything is, la di da. And here, things are very done by the book. And that felt so out of comfort for me. But I was here in Germany and I wanted to make it work. And because I've adapted to so many places, I thought, you know what? I can adapt to Germany, that I think I adapted way too much. I ended up becoming almost Germanized, that it didn't feel at all natural to me, and I somehow became lost, a little bit depressed. I would go to work, and I know that Germans don't really enjoy small talk, so it was even hard. I enjoy speaking to strangers. Here, it's not so much done. They live in their own little bubble. Like I said, it's really by the book. Of course, not all Germans are like this, but I can say that's pretty much their culture.
Mm.
So it just became hard for me to adapt to that. And then I was like, you know what? I need to ask myself this question. Am I going to stay here? In fact, I do like Germany. That's why I'm still here. The lifestyle is amazing. But if I stay here, I don't want to lose myself. And so that's when I started asking myself the questions: what is my passion? What can I do to remain happy? What can I do to stay connected to what I love? And so that's how it came about for me creating my passion project. So I started off with a passion project of mine called Swahili Secrets, which is basically promoting travel to Kenya. And I advise, different tours, different ways to travel, but to travel in a way that you can feel Kenya's culture and the people and understand it, because that's how I like to travel. That's how I want to encourage people to travel. So yeah, I started that project month by month. It was, getting people's attention, and it was helping me feel good because I was growing now my passion.
Mm.
After that, I also decided to create an online store with, African fabrics. So that was another great passion for me. I loved it. Everyone loved looking at me and like, wow, I like what you wear. I love the fabric. And I was like, oh, thank you. It just makes me feel so warm to hear that. And then I started selling sustainable products made out of the fabric. And to take another step further, that's when we founded, my colleague and I, my friend and I, we founded the Kenyan Kind. It was her idea. When she came to me, I just jumped up and I was like, "Yes, of course we have to do this. This is to do with Kenya." It's a difficult job managing everything, and so it's great that we have because she's just as passionate as me, maybe more, I don't know, but we share this passion together, and we hear stories from so many different Kenyans, non-Kenyans that have a passion for Kenya. And it's just so heartwarming because it drives that happiness in me again. I'm like, wow, life is bigger than that. So I don't get consumed in so much adapting into Germany, that now I hear from other stories as well.
That is absolutely incredible. Um, I have a question. So, when you were looking, you were soul searching for your
Right.
passion in the midst of difficulty, what could you take us through a bit of that journey in itself? How did you find your passion? What was there a calling? Just, yeah.
Thanks so much for asking that question. Actually, I feel so fortunate because it wasn't necessarily a calling. It actually just, I felt like it fell on my lap. And it came at the right time because I really didn't know. I was completely lost. I really had no clue. And it just so happened that because I always spoke about Kenya naturally, it was always in my subconscious. I was just always talking about Kenya, mainly because I missed it as well. My family are there. And I'd have friends that approach me and like, hey, Tanya, I'm actually curious. You made Kenya sound so beautiful. We want to visit. And I was like, oh, really? And I was like, okay, I'll take you. And I went to Kenya with 5 friends, and they were like, wow. And after that moment, I was like, okay, I should actually just continue with this. People are actually interested. It's not just me sharing or talking about my passion. People actually are invested in it.
Yeah.
So that's how it came about. It kind of fell on my lap, and I was like, okay, let me think of a name. Let me start to build a website. Let me start to build tours. Let me start to get connected with people in Kenya. And step by step, that's how it grew.
Wow. That is, I have a few goosebumps
Oh,
just listening to that story and how that passion, yeah, was revealed. A lot of the times you don't even know and you keep talking about it, and other people tend to realize it before you do.
exactly.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Um, so you've got Swahili Secrets, which is
Right.
your tourism platform and little gem
Exactly.
in Kenya, and you've got the fabrics one. That
Yes.
what's that called, or is it part of?
So it's just an extension of Swahili Secrets.
Yeah, yeah, and you've got the Kenyan kind. Um, have you tell us a bit about the Kenyan kind, which is where we connected, and it's on Instagram. You told us a bit about its starting and that journey, but how did you get Kenyans, and what do you find a trend in the different people that you interview? Or, yeah, tell us a bit about that.
Oh my gosh, yes, that's such a great question. Firstly, how it came about. My friend and I, Natasha, we, like I said, have such a great passion for Kenya. But her especially, she has a great passion to give back, and it's inspiring for me as well, because I'm like, wow, there's so much that we're here in Europe in the diaspora that we can actually give back to Kenya. We have that opportunity. So she came up with the idea. She reached out to me. I'm really good on social media, so I was like, you know what? Let's. And also, when I hear an idea that I love, I don't hesitate. I'm like, let's do it and let's start now.
Yeah.
So we pretty much just started with it, and we both got the ball rolling. She started reaching out to Kenyan friends that she knew, and we started getting stories from them. Then we started reaching out to just searching for Kenyans, non-Kenyans that basically from the Instagram. That's how we managed to do it. In terms of what we found common, or this is what I found common, Kenyans or non-Kenyans, but are so resilient. Um, they've been through so much. There's such a long journey in their chapters, let's say.
Mm.
And I every time I read a story, it reminds me not to give up. It just reminds me so much that you just have to keep on going, because there will always be a light. No one's life is rosy and happy go lucky. It's never like that. But it really tests your character, our lives. And every time I just see their journey, and I'm like, wow, they went through so much. And they also have Kenyans also have a lot of passion in them, you know? I feel like that's something that's not really seen around the world. We are innovators, we are creatives, we are artists, but no one really sees that. And when I read the stories, I'm like, wow, oh my gosh, such a talented person, and it's inspiring for me because I want to grow my own talents as well. So yeah, that's what they basically have in common.
That is amazing. And thank you for saying that. Yeah, we are an extremely passionate bunch. And
Yeah,
you want to do something, you
exactly.
just go and do it. And you find friends along the way. Do you like this?
Yeah,
Yep,
yeah,
come.
that's how it is.
Let's
Come, join the ship, let's go.
absolutely, absolutely. Um, Tell us a little bit about, so with Kenya, Swahili Secrets, it's about the people, about the cultures, about the places, and of course the food. Tell us a bit about that. What are some of your favorite places, people, culture?
Yeah, of course. Um, so Swahili Secrets is really special to me, firstly, because unlike all the travel that you see, all the cliche travel agents, hey, go to Kenya, go on a safari, and then come back. I don't really necessarily like that. I want you to meet the local people. I want you to eat the local food. I want you to shop at the local places because that's the only way that you will really understand what I mean, that Kenya is amazing. Um, and it took me a while also to feel that because I was born in Kenya, and when we moved back to Kenya, I felt such a connection because I was like, okay, this is the land I was born in. I want to learn about it. I want to get invested with the people. And oh my gosh, I was just so humbled and so heartwarmed that Kenyans, they're such kind people, such friendly people. um, so I'm really passionate about the people, let's say, about the culture. Then comes the food, of course, and then of course the travel. But actually, it's really the people that get to me the most, because I've traveled a lot, like I've said, and I
Mm.
haven't really felt that connection. Like when you enter Kenya, already someone will talk to you, and you will already start having a bond. And I know that many people would agree with me because I've talked to people who have traveled to Kenya, and they're like, oh, the people are so nice. And I'm like, yeah. And you'll find that a lot of people that travel to Kenya, in fact, go back because of this reason. They really enjoy, of course, the weather. And then maybe the weather has a big part to play with our personality. But yeah, like we're all so happy, very we in fact, I know a lot of people might not like this phrase, like you don't need much to be happy, because I know it can be a little bit controversial, but I really believe you actually don't need much, to be honest. It actually has to come within, because I've been in a place where I had everything and I was unhappy. And when I'm in a place, and it just made me realize that in fact you really, really don't need much to find that happiness within. And you'll find that a lot of Kenyans have that within themselves. They don't have so much, but they found that happiness that, you take it day by day, and irregardless, life is actually that simple. So I do love that part. Yeah, so I'm more passionate about the people, the food. Oh, when I tasted all the good food, oh my goodness, it's so good. Um, and yeah, the travel, I'm really passionate about the coast, so I focus more about the coast because it's beautiful. It's filled with white sandy beaches. It's been voted again and again the best beaches in Africa. So without a doubt, of course, I love the beach, and of course the animals. You don't see that everywhere. In fact, something that I want to maybe focus on going into the new year is probably conservation, because I'm now starting to open up my mind to sustainability, the environment, which I never was aware of in the past. I think many of us as well. But it's actually very serious. We've really done a bad job. And so we have to focus now on, we really have to, all of us have to focus on conservation, sustainability, if we really want to be here, live happy here. Plus, it was never really our right. Everything we kind of took over. We
Mm.
didn't really care for it. So this is something that I want to focus now going into this year, is exploring conservation in Kenya and learning about it. Because I know there is a lot. I know that Kenya does a lot to do to protect their environment, to protect their culture, to protect their people, and that's something I want to learn and educate people hopefully after.
Absolutely. And you'd have such a wonderful a few different platforms to be able to do that.
Exactly. Yeah, that's true. That's
Amazing.
totally true.
And there's power in numbers, right? Power in sharing.
Yeah, I
Beautiful.
agree.
Um, so going back to your difficult time in
Yeah,
Germany, and you said it was quite hard and almost even in that depressive state, right? Could would you be comfortable in talking more about it? What
of course.
what did it feel like? I'm really curious to, yeah, as a migrant, and that loneliness aspect as well, or the lack of support. Yeah, please tell us a bit about it.
Yeah, it was a difficult time because I also felt ashamed to talk about it. I've always lived this happy-go-lucky life that how can you be depressed, How can you be sad? You have everything. So I almost felt ashamed to ever mention it. But deep down inside, I would wake up every day dreading it. Which I've never had the position to be in. I'd wake up really not wanting to wake up, to be honest. Um, and how I knew that it was getting really serious is I just became numb. I've never had a moment where I just couldn't care. I just was like, okay, this is it. I didn't have a passion then. I was just numb. Now it just, because I have to do it, I have to get an income, I have to live this life. So I just woke up and it just became a routine. At first, I was really dreading it. That's when I realized, okay, this is something that doesn't make me happy. But then I felt, okay, it's something that I have to do. And firstly, who can I speak to about it? No one is going to understand it. My family's far away. How can I tell them, like, I'm going through depression, I'm struggling here emotionally? And I know that in certain cultures or different generations, they don't also understand so much about depression. So I didn't feel like I could also lean on their shoulder to get the comfort. So I kept to myself for a very, very long time. And yeah, that definitely isn't good. If anyone is going through something like this, of course my extent wasn't so bad, but definitely when you know you need it, reach out for help. Reach out for help, because you can never do it on your own. um, and yeah, for me, I was just fortunate that I actually went back to Kenya. And it was while I was in Kenya with this group of friends that I traveled with that I realized, okay, I'm so happy here. This has to be it. I have to hold on to this because this is what makes me happy. And if I let go, I'll fall back into depression. And so I just held on to it because it's what made me happy. And when you find that passion, like I say, I always jump onto anything that just has my like passion written on it, because I'm like, this is what I need. I have it. This is what makes me happy. Don't hesitate. There's no reason to. So yeah, that's basically that period that I went through. And yeah, I mean, I've moved on from it. I'm still living in Germany, so I'm not depressed. I am happy. I do have a job here. I enjoy it. I take walks. I've learned to kind of strike that balance now. Like for the issue for me was that I had adapted too much to a culture that was far from my own, that I lost myself. Now I'm appreciating the land that I'm in. I'm enjoying their culture. I'm admiring it, but I'm still staying true to myself. That's pretty much the difference.
That is beautiful. And that's a fantastic segue into my next question. What does being Kenyan mean to you, to your heart of hearts?
You know that's a beautiful question. Sometimes I hesitate because I was born in Kenya. I lived in Kenya for the most part, but I always actually refer to myself as African more than I do actually Kenyan. The reason for that is because my mother is Madagascan. I was born in Kenya and I lived in 5 African countries. And just the way that I lived in Kenya, I lived in these other African countries. I just feel closer to Kenya because I it's my favorite. But I lived in South Africa, Botswana, Uganda, and like I said, Tanzania and Zanzibar. And I was able to relate so much to each of these countries because we're actually very similar as Africans. And yeah, that's why I refer to myself as African, because even in Madagascar, it can be similar to places in South Africa or Mozambique, and South Africa is similar to Botswana. And I've also been to Zimbabwe many times. So all these countries are so similar to one another. that I just realized, okay, you know what, I do feel African, and I feel like it's valid because I've lived in so many of these countries that I understand it. My mother is African. Um, so your question, right? What does it mean to be Kenyan? Rather, I'll change it to being African. What does it mean? You know what? I'm just so proud because Africa is an untouched place. You know, no one really, there are people who feel curious, but there are also people who feel intimidated or they're fed this different media. But Africa is kind, Africa is warm, Africa is safe. But especially the warm part. When I talk about warmth, I mean it from the heart. You know, we are such warm people. We understand what life is, to be simple, to be lived at its most simplest form, you know? Um, yeah, that's what it means to me. And honestly, every place that I've been, I've just always been so humbled by the people, by the food. I definitely have to move back at some point.
That's right. You know, that idea of having to choose one place or the other. Some people
Yeah.
are fortunate to be able to have two places, right?
Yes.
What? Yeah, actually, what do you think about, in our families, or there is that expectation if you move somewhere for your
Mhm.
studies or whatever it might be, then almost a little bit of an implied, and it might not be, I might be generalizing this, and my apologies for that generalization, but to move back home or that. But if you feel like, you've got two homes, what does that,
Yeah.
yeah, what do you think
True.
of that concept? Or
Yeah, I think, you know, as an expat or as I think it's actually very difficult because then you have a, you know, I find myself sometimes even when I go back to Kenya, I have to readapt again
yeah,
because I came to Germany. I had to adapt to something that's so different. When I go back to Kenya, I kind of need a few days to acclimatize again.
yeah,
It's definitely not an easy job to be an expat. I know that it's also hard because when your family is at home, you know, they also have expectations of me when I'm here. I don't know if it's the same for other people, but um, you know, you have expectations to, they don't know the life you're living in your second home. So they imagine that it's all rosy. You went there for a reason, so it must be good. I'm not realizing that we also have struggles, that we also, you know, are trying to live our best life. We've come here, we made that choice, so we're just trying to make it work. We didn't come here because it's like just gonna be good on the get-go. We have to start from A, and now we're working our way up again. So it's so interesting because also flying back home, yeah, like I said, you have to acclimatize. It gets difficult sometimes doing the back and forth. And now it's actually been the longest period that I haven't been home because of the current circumstances.
yeah.
That I know when I go back, I'm so curious to know how I will feel because it's been that long. I'm like, wow, am I going to be so excited? Am I going to need time to acclimatize? Am I not going to want to leave? What's going to
Yeah,
happen?
that's right, the unknown.
Yeah,
And yeah, and with the year and with COVID and everything, things
exactly.
have changed. There has been a lot of change every
It
single
has.
day to then go, yeah, you can't, before you might have been able to predict what you would feel like, whereas now
Yeah.
I can empathize how different it might be. Yes.
Yeah, especially with that situation. Now, you know, you start to really feel so much gratitude for so much because now it's like such a reality check, you know? Life is very short. You have to be grateful for everything that you have. So it's also very humbling that we're all going through this. I really empathize with anyone that is suffering. But it is such a huge reality check. I think, you know, you go on living life thinking that tomorrow is a given, when in fact it really isn't. And I love that concept because now for I think since 2020, regardless of COVID, but I had an experience in my life and I just realized that you just have to live day to day. That's pretty much how it goes. You really just have to take it day by day because nothing is a given. Everything is pretty much temporary.
That is really interesting. And I feel like you can read
Um,
questions that are in my brain.
Oh yeah.
And that day-to-day living, you talked about finding, being grateful for things, finding joy in the different cultures and different places. In Tanya's day of joy and happiness, or not even, let's not say joy and happiness, but that balance of all is well, sort of, what does that day look like? What are the little things that make up the beauty in that day?
Well, normally I like to start my day off slow, especially because it's still dark until like 9 a.m.
Oh wow.
So already that's an adjustment. I'm not used to that. Actually, in Kenya, I rise when the sun rises. So here it's a bit hard because it's normally gray. So I've decided that the way to adapt is probably to also take it slow like the weather does. So I wake up slowly, I kind of adjust, have a nice breakfast, do a little bit of stretching. Um, my day really only starts to feel good when I do some work with Swahili Secrets. That's when my day starts to hit. Right now, Swahili Secrets is my part-time job, I'd say, and on the side, I also do social media. So I do pretty much both. I'm also a very creative and artsy person by nature. So fortunately, these things come very natural to me. So I don't feel like I'm stressed out. I do feel like, okay, I'm enjoying this, and I'm fortunate that I can do something from home. But like I said, the joy really only hits is when I start to do stuff with Swahili Secrets. So I start to do research on travel in Kenya, or I start to look at different destinations in Kenya that I haven't seen before. I start to talk to Kenyans and get a connection on doing business together. Um, yeah, this is pretty much the moment that I feel joy. And then after that, what I do or what I've been doing in the past year is also cooking a lot of Kenyan food. Oh my goodness. And then this is like therapy for me, you know. I have to say, you know, like when I talk about African food, Kenyan food isn't actually like the most glamorous, to be honest, but it comforts me so much. Like ugali, which is, I think you will know it, right? So yeah, even even though it's not that tasty, just the fact that I'm making it and eating it with my hands and dipping it in a stew and eating it with the greens and enjoying it, this is another thing that brings me joy. So I, like I said, I've learned to adapt here. So I do things that I feel give me joy, but I appreciate where I am.
Absolutely. I wish you were a bit closer. Going, Tanya,
Oh,
are you making those mandazis?
of course. Sometime.
I I miss those dearly, and because I'm not a fantastic cook, or my level of cooking is equivalent to a child's level of cooking, I go, oh no, too hard.
It's actually difficult. I can't say I'm a good cook. I merely only do it because it's like I said, it gives me the happiness to do it.
Absolutely. Tell us about some of the foods, your favorite Kenyan foods, or just favorite African foods in general.
Of course. Oh, I could talk about that all day. um, no, I like I said, I really enjoy cooking Kenyan food at home because it gives me comfort. But when it comes to African food, which one do I enjoy the most? Ethiopian food. Have you ever tried it?
Oh, yum, injera and the lentils. Oh,
Yeah,
yeah, it's
I
so good.
know. I
Yeah.
know. Actually, I had an interesting moment. Basically, you know, when you live in a new country and you have to make friends, that's another challenge, to be honest. So I often use social media to connect with people, and I connected with another who is now my friend, who we come from similar backgrounds, and we met at a Ethiopian restaurant. She's like, Tanya, we have to meet there. She's half African, half European.
Yeah.
And when we met there, she made a comment that really warmed my heart, and I was like, okay, this is going to be a good friend of mine, because she was like, Tanya, this is the only place I can eat food in Germany. It connects with me so much. It has so many spices. It has you know, you feel in touch with the food. You eat with your hands. And she's like, I just can't eat anywhere else. And I was like, oh, exactly. African food is really filled with flavor. It's slow cooked. It's yeah, it's just very, it has a lot of depth in it. So Ethiopian food, definitely. I really enjoyed South African food. South African food, I noticed there's a lot of different barbecues and meats, and I have to say they're really good at it. Oh wow. Um, And yeah, just the regular. Actually, Africans also eat very healthy, a lot of vegetables. So yeah, I enjoy that too. In fact, I enjoy every food. I don't have any complaints.
I love it. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
The other day I made shakshuka. Now tell
Oh
me,
wow.
does that come from, is it South African
You
originally?
know what? Actually, I don't, I've seen this recipe a lot because of course, I'm also looking through recipes. I don't know where it's from. I wonder because I lived in South Africa, like I said, my partner's actually Moroccan, so I've heard that it might be Moroccan, but he's like, no, no, we don't make that in Morocco. And I noticed that in South Africa they didn't make it. So I
Oh,
was wondering, okay, where is this dish really from? But
okay.
I know I really don't know. Maybe it is. I don't know. I haven't seen who's made it yet. I've eaten it outside of Africa, and I know many people who've eaten it outside of Africa, but I don't know if they eat it in Africa.
I'll need to search it because I was telling someone, I don't know, I was so convinced it was South African. I was like, yes, I'm sure
Yeah,
it's their breakfast. And now, yeah, I'll go in and research it.
something similar. Not similar, but it maybe with the same nuance of the name. Chakalaka. Have you heard of that?
You know what? I was on your live that day
Yeah.
and you
Oh,
guys
really?
it, but I had something else to do.
Of
And
course.
it
So
looked
good.
pretty
Yeah.
easy to make. And
So
so
easy. So
try
easy.
that. Yeah.
Please. So good.
Tell,
Oh, I enjoyed it so much.
tell us about chakalaka.
Oh, of course. It's so delicious, even just like imagining it in my head. It's super simple. It's basically just a bean relish. Let's say baked beans. So you basically just bring baked beans, grate carrots, add curry spices together. I know there is a lot of history to do with it, so I don't really know much about the history, but the way that it's made is super simple. Just baked beans, tomatoes, grated carrots, stew it a bit with some spices, and there you go. I have it with my breakfast. I eat it with eggs. Normally in South Africa, they eat it with like similar to a mandazi, so it's like a fried bread. They
Yeah.
call it magwinya, and yeah, they just eat it together with it. Oh, so
Yum.
good.
Okay.
I
I love
know.
my dishes loaded with vegetables. I will make that and add
Good.
a lot more
Good.
veggies to it. Yum. Thank you.
Of course.
And one of the final questions is, what's your vision for a utopic world? And oh yeah, answer that and then I'll go to the next one.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Uh, my envision, honestly, the older I get, the more I see it. Instead of doing like the cliche, okay, no poverty, no peace, but I'm starting to realize that a lot of people are quite self-centered, that if we were the opposite and if we cared for each other and if we really had the best interest, and I mean this is genuinely, I struggle with it too. I'm not saying that I'm perfect or anything, but I do envision a world with all of us really having the best interest for your neighbor, for the person next to you, for the person on the street.
mm,
um, and then I really believe it will be a better world, because then you wouldn't have things like corruption, then you wouldn't have things like people, greed, or you wouldn't have things like all these bad habits. If you just genuinely felt kind towards one another, things would change 100%. And not just one another, I mean the earth as well. This is something that I'm just kind of approaching in my life. Like I said, the older you get, the more you're like, okay, there's things that are important, and having your best interest for someone else, because we really need more of that. We really do. We need to care for each other. Rather, I know it's hard because we want to care for ourselves, but if we did it for each other, I don't think we'd have so many problems.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. That's such a beautiful way of putting it. Everything, usually with a utopic world, everything seems quite out of your reach, like because it's too big. But when we start small and within us, with
Yeah, yeah.
we can do, those effects could be rippled.
Exactly. Yeah, I really believe so. I really believe so. Because yeah, I think maybe I see it more here as well, in Europe, because of course there's a different lifestyle here. Everyone is very individualistic, but I think that it needs to change. I think there needs to be more of a community feel. I think that we need to support one another and do it genuinely, not because you have to, but you feel it in your heart.
Absolutely. And again, I'll keep saying it, but 2020 has really proven that is look
Yeah.
like, just check-ins, say hi, reach out.
Yeah,
Doesn't matter. Yeah, you don't have to be there physically, but those little actions can have a profound impact. Yeah.
exactly.
Um,
True.
and to before we wrap it up, is there anything that you wanted to say that I didn't bring up or didn't ask or
No, no, I think with everything that I've said in my migration journey, if there's any advice that I would give to anybody, definitely stay true to yourself. I think that's how you should also live life. Be true to yourself, be authentic. I'm still exploring it, and it's such an exciting journey. So definitely that's what I would, advise to anyone that's searching, soul searching. Yeah, there you go.
beautiful? My see, you're reading the questions in my brain. 5 key takeaways from your 3 to 5 key takeaways. We'll make one be true to yourself. Anything else?
Exactly.
Anything
No.
you'd like to? Yeah,
Yeah.
beautiful. Oh, this has been so wonderful. Thank you so much, Tanya, for having this open, honest, really wide conversation. Thank you. I really do appreciate your time and effort for it.
Also, you're doing an amazing job with this platform. Really, you're providing a voice for many of us. So I'm sure it's appreciated by so many people. So please continue. Please keep doing it. I'll be watching, and I'm super honored. And it was a pleasure. I hope people who heard this also enjoyed it, could take something away from it. Yeah, thank you so much.
You're very welcome. And I'll put all of your Instagram pages in this,
Yeah,
in the introduction, so people will
everyone's
be able
interested.
to
Yeah.
follow you. So thank you. I'll stop recording.